Cool. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to go with the most scary subject there is in math, fractions. Dun, dun, dun. So, fractions. Very first thing is, I'm going to show you how fractions are really, really easy. So, we're going to start with something very basic. Couple of things is, when do I need a common denominator? So we need a common denominator only when we add or subtract. Only when we add or subtract. So only for addition and subtraction. Okay? Multiplication and division does not. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start with fraction, addition, and subtraction. Fraction, addition, or subtraction. So I'm going to start off with a quick little example. Let's see if I can move this over. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to start with a very simple one. I'm going to say 1/2 plus 3/4. This is not 4/6. Again, I repeat, this is not 4/6. So I'm doing addition. Do I need a common denominator? Yes, only for these. Remember, addition and subtraction, I will need a common denominator. So what is going to be my common denominator? CD stands for common denominator. I need to find a number that works for both of these. So that means I can transform one of these fractions into the other and vice versa, or into a common factor. So actually, I'm going to make this problem a little bit more tricky. I'm going to go ahead and put this as a 3/7. So I'm going to scratch that. I'm going to say my example is going to be 1/2 plus 3/7. That way, my common denominator is a little bit more complicated. So I need to take this number, and this number I have to transform it to a number that also is a number that I can transform this guy into. So let's see. I call this my plumb station. I always do a little plumb station, and I do some side work on the side because I'm not really tackling the arithmetic part of the problem here. I'm tackling just the common denominator requirement that they need to have. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this this is my little plumper station. What do I mean by the word plump? Plump means like to fatten up. We plump our lips, Kylie Jenner status, but Kylie Jenner is still Kylie Jenner, right? I know it's weird, but here we go. I have 1/2. That's my first guy. I'm going to write them there. And then I got 3/7 right there. So in order to maintain equality, right here, I need to find a number that when I plump, and when I use the word plump means to multiply, okay? So some little hints I'm going to put is plump implies multiplication. Okay, so this is my little plump station. So I need to find a number that I can multiply this guy, and it's going to give me the same number that I can multiply this guy. So what is a number that 7 and 2 both agree with? That's going to be 14. So my common denominator is 14. So now I ask myself, 2 times what? 2 times what gives me 14? If you said 7, ding, 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 that's correct. But remember, I have equality here. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So bam, bam. That's the only way that I'm going to be able to maintain this equality. So now what's 1 times 7? 7, right there. So tell me, is this true? Is 1/2 the same as 7/14? Yes, that ratio is still the same. So what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. That's the only way that I maintain equality. Cool, I'm going to do the same thing to this one. If you guessed it, 7 times what gives me 14? And if you said 2, ding, 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 you're also right. So right there, what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 3 times 2 gives me 6. So I've now created my plump. My plump is ready. So now instead of dealing with 1/2 plus 3/7, I am now going to deal with 7/14 plus 6/14. When I have a common denominator, once I've reached a common denominator, all I need is, hold on, let me put this to the side. Here we go. All I need is to now analyze just the numerators. So I have a common denominator now, so all I have to do is just analyze the numerators. That's what that means. 7 plus 6, that gives me 13 over 14. I can't simplify this anymore because there's no common factors between the numerator and the denominator that I am able to factor out. So that is my final answer. So I hope my little plumb station worked. I'm going to go ahead and do another one. I'm going to do another problem with subtraction now. So, and I'm going to go into some negative work so that we can also have that there. So I'm going to say 5/12 take away 1 3/5. Ooh. So another rule I'm going to tackle here is that whenever we have a mixed number like this, I must turn it into improper. So all fractions must be improper before we begin, okay? So I'm going to give you a little crash course on improper fractions real quick. So I'm going to take that 1 3/5 right here, and I'm going to do my little trick that I always do. My little trick says the following. You start with your denominator. The denominator visits the whole number, and then it tracks over to the numerator. So you see that little thing like that? Right here, there's a little dot, and on top, there's a little plus sign. So I really call this my fraction chola pose. I can't show you right now, but I mean, I do a little chola thing. And what happens is that's a little teardrop, and that's a little plus sign. It's all good. So here we go. 5 times 1 gives me 5, plus 3 gives me 8, so this becomes 8/5. So I hope you can see that. So I'm now going to rewrite my problem as 5/12 take away 8/5. So again, I'm doing subtraction. I need to make sure I have a common denominator. Do I have a common denominator? No. So I must come into my little plump box. So once I have my little, what is going to be my common denominator? I don't know. We'll see right now. So 5/12 is my first term, and I have 8/5. I'm leaving out the subtraction. I'm just looking at the terms individually. And so we're going to go ahead and see what is going to be the plumper. So we ask ourselves, what's a good number that agrees to both 12 and 5? And if you said 60, right there, we'll see why. 12 times what gives me 60? So that's going to be a 5. Whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. That's the only way I maintain the ratio equality. So that's going to give me 25. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to say 5 times what gives me 60. And so that's going to be 12. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Okay. So now I'm going to multiply 8 times 12, and what does that give me? That gives me 96. Bam, right there. So my problem now, I found the common denominator between both of them. I'm now going to go ahead and put it back. So I have 25 over 60, take away 96 over 60. Once I have a common denominator, watch. Once I have a common denominator, all I have to do is analyze the numerator. So I also have a little two-line rule here that I do, which means when I'm subtracting numbers, I'm really just adding the inverse of the second value. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn this into addition. I'm going to switch the sign of the second value, and that's going to give me something easier to understand. So 25 plus negative 96. 25 plus negative 96 gives me negative 71 over 60. Now I can leave it as improper, but if you want to write it back into a mixed number, you can. So remember that I am able to also break this down into negative 60 over 60, and then I have also a negative 11 over 60. Right? So that's going to give me the 71 over 60 that is equivalent here. And 11 and 60 don't match. I don't have anything else to reduce. So this is going to be negative 1 and 11 over 60. Okay? So these are my answers right here. Okay? And in order to do next fraction multiplication, my fraction multiplication is the easiest one of them all. Fraction multiplication is, there we go, the easiest rule. Here's the fraction multiplication rule. Fraction multiplication. And the rule says top, top, bottom, bottom. So exactly what the rule says is exactly what we do for when we're multiplying fractions. So here's my example. I have 3/4 times 2/5. So all I have to do is use my rule. So what's top, top? 3 times 2 gives me 6. And what's bottom, bottom? 5 times 4 gives me 20. There is my fraction. But wait, my fraction can be reduced because, first of all, 6 and 20 are both even numbers. So I can factor it out. And I'm going to factor this out in the way that we do when we're looking at rational functions. So I'm going to break it down. So 6 breaks down to 2 and 3. And I'm going to also break down this right here into one of these possible factors. So 3 doesn't work, but 2 does. So I know that 20 breaks down as 2 times 10. So now I'm able to see that they have a common factor that when divided reduces to 1, the identity element of multiplication. And so this really simplifies to 3/10. So that's the rule. Fraction multiplication. Okay. Now with fraction division. Fraction division has one extra step that turns something into multiplication, and then you can go right back to top, top, bottom, bottom. So fraction division, it indicates the following. When I have two fractions, that are being divided, the very first thing I gotta do is I turn my division into multiplication, because just like I said that subtraction was really just the addition of the additive inverse, division is really just the multiplication of the inverse of the second ratio. So I flip this guy. So I flip it and it becomes this. And then I do top, top, bottom, bottom. So this will all now become that. So that's going to be the rule. Let's go ahead and do it with this one. So I have 3/4 divided by 2/5. Okay, so first thing I got to do is rewrite the first one. Doesn't change. Notice this one never changed. So, and my division turns into multiplication, and this guy flips. So I now have 5/2. Ah, look, it's multiplication. I just made a multiplication, so I'm back to top, top, bottom, bottom. So 5 times 3, top, top, 15, bottom. 4 times 2, 8. 15 and 8 do not have any common factor, so I can leave it like that. Or I can break it down to 15 over 8 is the same as 8 over 8 plus 7 over 8, which means I have 1 and 7/8. Okay? Oh, let me bring that up so you can see that. So, I've given you a little crash course on fraction addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So, don't be afraid of a little fraction, everybody. They're easy breezies. Until next time.